This meeting is now live on YouTube.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Boston Town and Ministry Committee. First committee meetings to be met in person for some time. Though most of our officers have appeared virtually, including the clerk and our guests from the big local and Inspector Harrod from the police. Welcome to you all. I'd particularly like to welcome Councillor Katie Chalmers as a new member of the committee, and this is your first meeting with us. I hope you'll enjoy your work with us, and love to see you this evening. Thank you for coming. We'll start a little bit of preliminaries. My name is Councillor Paul Goodale. I'm the chairman of this committee, and Councillor Stephen Woodliff is my vice chairman. So there we go. I would like you all to respectfully comply with the COVID regulations this evening, social distancing and hand sanitising and mask wearing when you're not sat in your seat. We could receive apologies for absence, please.
We have received apologies for absence from councillors Alan Bell, Deborah Evans, Martin Howard and Anne Dorian.
Thank you, Pippa. Excuse me. The minutes of the last meeting. Does anyone wish to comment on the accuracy of the minutes? No, but then I'll take that as it was agreed. And that the minutes were correctly recorded, and I will sign them. Thank you. To receive updates and actions on the minutes of the last meeting, please, Mr. Perry.
Okay, but there were three actions. The first was to draft a letter to Lincolnshire County Council as agreed. This action has been completed. The County Council replied to the letter on the 20th of April, and the reply was shared with members of this committee on the 23rd of April. The second action was to advise members of the legal situation with respect to charging for an event held in Central Park, with it being a public facility. This action is currently being worked on, and I'll provide an updated position at the next Btac meeting on the 5th of August. It transpires that the packet goes back to 1898, so there's quite a lot of work to get through for this piece of this action. And the third action was to advise relevant officers of reports requested. This action has been completed and the works programme has been updated accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. I'd also advise members that the last cabinet meeting I attended to put Btac's position with regard to the town council and the reference to full council. I advised the committee that the cabinet decided to refer it to the scrutiny committees, so it will appear there before it goes to full council. So that's where we are with that one. D, to receive declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda. On the two items, Yvonne, sorry.
On page 6, where it talks about the Jeff Mulder Leisure Centre. Jeff Mulder Leisure Centre is within my portfolio.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. And Councillor Grace Martin.
Yeah, so for agenda item 2, one of the recommendations is to refer it to the head of service along with consultation with the portfolio holder. That would be me, so I'll take part in the discussion, but I won't vote on recommendations because whilst I am sat here in my capacity as a Btac member, just to avoid any confusion from the outside, I won't vote on anything that directly links to my other roles on council.
I apologise to keep taking my glasses on, but I can't see you if I keep them on. Thank you. To answer any written questions, are there any?
There are none, Chair.
Thank you. Public speaking time. Is there a member of the public present who wishes to address the committee?
No one is indicated, Chair.
Thank you, Pippa. That concludes the preliminary items. We will now move on to part 2 of the agenda. Agenda item 1, first item on the agenda, and it is the small grant scheme, which starts on page 5 of the pack of papers, and we're presented by Maddie Eyre. Maddie, would you like to address the committee, please? You're on mute, Maddie.
Thank you, Chairman. Can everybody hear me okay?
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My report this evening is in three parts. Number one, presenting small grant applications made to the Small Grant Working Group in February 2021 for endorsement by this committee. Part two is information for noting only with regard to withdrawn applications from round 3 of the 1920 financial year. And part 3, consideration to be given to the proposal from Boston Big Local at Appendix 1 of this report. We welcome representatives from Boston Big Local this evening, Jodie Rago and Richard Torrey, who I will invite to give you a brief presentation before you do. So moving on then, if you would kindly refer to pages 6 and 7 of your agenda, I will go through the applications received in round 1. All recommendations from the working group have been provided on table 2, which should have been circulated as pinks with this evening's pack. So 1.1 of the report, we've had 13 applications received in round 1 of the Boston Town Area Committee Small Grant Scheme. Of the 13, all were eligible for consideration. Details of applicants are set out in table 1 below. Working group recommendations to be circulated this evening at full committee. Applicants were notified that whilst COVID-19 recovery would not be an additional theme applied to the scheme, consideration would be given to groups looking for assistance in this area and should therefore make reference to this in their applications. So if I may, through the chair, go through all of the applications that we have received and give you the working group recommendations. The first was from Headway Lincolnshire. As part of their COVID-19 recovery, Headway Lincolnshire are looking for funding to support revenue costs associated with supporting their beneficiaries as they have been unable to fundraise during 2020. The amount has been requested is £1,000 contributions towards the cost of premises rental for 6 months. The suggested award has been £1,000, all agreed to award the full amount requested. Moving on, we've received an application from Rhubarb Theatre to develop an arts-based resource pack about the environment, which will be taken to the priorities of the council relating to the environment, climate change, recycling, etc., and delivered to all schools in the Btac area. They requested £1,000 and all agreed to award full amount requested of £1,000. Application that was considered was from Boston Borough Council Jeff Moulder Leisure Complex to expand their current swimming programme and develop the Jeff Moulder Swimming Academy. This will enable them to purchase new signage, promote the scheme, produce translated information packs and purchase new technology to aid planning and recording lessons and tracking progress. They requested £1,000 and all agreed to award the full amount requested. The next application was from Friends of Fidel House to fund and the purchase of patio tables and chairs for the gardens to increase their visitor offer. They requested £1,000 all agreed to award the full amount of £1,000. Next is Boston in Bloom Partnership. Contribution to the cost of commissioning a film by Electric Egg to enable their entry into both the regional and national Bloom competitions in 2021. They requested £1,000 and all agreed to award the full amount of £1,000. Then we got Parish of Boston Food Bank to purchase storage equipment for the food bank currently housed at Blenkin Memorial Hall. The amount requested was £680 and all agreed to award full amount requested. For Fun to contribute towards the cost of running the group, admin costs, equipment costs to ensure they're able to continue during the pandemic. They requested £1,000 and all agreed to award the full amount requested. The next application was from a Cooksall 1 to contribute towards the cost of renting their unit to ensure continued viability when lockdown restrictions are lifted. They requested £1,000 and all agreed to to award the full amount requested on the understanding that this is a one-off and they cannot come back to this fund for this project. Boston Park Run. This is contribution to set up costs to run junior park run scheme in Boston Central Park. They requested £1,000. All agreed to award the full amount requested. However, funding will not be released until we have that the group has secured the additional £2,000 needed to start up this project. Application from St John Ambulance. Contribute towards the cost of training 9 new young volunteers to their cadet programme in the Fenside ward of Boston. Requested £1,000 and all agreed to award the full amount. The We'll Meet Again Museum. Contribute toward the cost of delivering their fully immersive education programmes to schools within the Btac area. They requested £1,000 and all agreed to award the full amount on the condition that monitoring demonstrates that they have engaged with schools and others from the Btac areas. Skirbeck St Nicholas Community Centre. Contribute towards the cost of further refurbishments to the centre, ladies' toilet and provision of a wet room. They requested £1,000 and all agreed to award the full amount requested. And the final application was from the local community centre. Purchase and install new hot water system to this new and developing centre. They requested £1,000 and all agreed to award the full amount requested. So that concludes all of the applications that we received in round 1. Would you like me to continue with the rest of the report, Chairman, or would you like people to ask questions?
We'll pause at this moment, please, Maddie, and we'll ask members' comments about these. Yvonne.
Thank you, Chairman. St Nicholas, Skirbeck St Nicholas Community Centre. I question why a wet room when not so very long ago I was in that particular building and they got perfectly good toilets because they went wet room with toilets. I just question why a wet room when they've got facilities.
Thank you. Did you catch that, Maddie, or have you gone?
Maddie, you need to.
He moved it again.
It doesn't quite click right every time I try to click. Sorry about that. Okay.
Okay.
If you just bear with me a moment, I just need to get my notes.
That's fine.
Chairman, could I make a declaration while I is looking? Although it is not in round 1, there is reference to centre point outreach in paragraph 1.2 below. I am, of course, a director of centre point outreach.
You can register if you want, Alison, but that's
Well,
just it's just to say that we're withdrawing the application. Yeah, that's fine.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, whilst Maddie's finding documents, I'm aware of the ongoing upgrades to St Nick's Community Centre, and whilst I don't know exactly what they put in their grant bid, as I'm not on the subgroup, nor have I seen the application, I am aware that they have lots of different groups that use the hall. So I know they have martial arts groups that go there, and I would imagine that it may be related to the many and varied different groups that they have to ensure that they're able to provide the facilities that those groups need.
I think, well, if memory serves me rightly, Martin, this is a while ago since we actually ran this, but I think it was down due to the martial arts group that they wanted this shower facility, but just obviously a wet room enables everybody to use it, disabled or otherwise. But have you found it yet, Maddie?
Yes, I have. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Basically, continuing with the refurbishment programme of the facilities, the Skirbeck Community Centre wish to progress onto the next project, which will be the updating of the gents' toilets and provision of a shower wet room. The ladies' toilets were modified 3 years ago following the completion of the disabled car parking space, partly funded by a Btac grant. The modification of the ladies was greatly appreciated by all our female users, and it is now our wish to carry out similar works to the gents. One of our existing user groups is a martial arts class who teach both youngsters and adults. They hold 6 classes per week, and from time to time they invite demonstrators and examiners from outside the county. Due to the nature of this exercise, they often wish to shower before returning home. Normally this means a trip to one of the group leaders' homes, but with a wet room at the hall, this difficulty would be eliminated. The hall is also listed as an emergency centre, and we feel having a wet room facility would be very beneficial should this need ever arise.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone wish to ask any more questions on this part? Yes, Councillor Downey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Just a point of clarification. What group is the Cook Soul one? I just would like
The
to know.
martial arts group.
They're martial arts as well. Okay, just
They're martial arts.
yeah, that's fine.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, are we discussing these now, or are we waiting for Maddie?
Well, I just wanted to know if anybody wanted any clarification. Okay. Can you continue? It's just that Yvonne put a hand up, and so I just thought, well, if you want clarification, that's easy. Yes, Maddie, if you would like to continue, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We now move on to part 1.2 of the report, which is for noting only. There were 2 applicants from round 3, 1920 financial year, Centrepoint Outreach and Lincoln Diocesan Board of Education, that chose option 2 when we reopened after the first lockdown, to put their application on hold until such time as they were able to deliver their projects. This was on the basis that the funds allocated to these projects were ring-fenced. The combined total for these applications was £1,754. Both applications have now been withdrawn from the programme. Consequently, the allocated funds will now be put back into the community grant pot. Okay, so that's that part of the report. And then moving on to part 3, the chairman has received correspondence from Boston Big Local asking for an investment from Btac towards production of a Boston Monopoly board. You'll see Appendix 1 of this report, which covers the correspondence received. Representatives from Boston Big Local will give a brief presentation for committee members. And it needs noting that the Small Grants Working Group are not able to make decisions on funds requested that are greater than the Small Grants Programme allows, and any investment would not necessarily come from the Small Grants budget. At this point, I'd like to welcome Jodie Rago and Richard Torrey from Boston Big Local to give you all a brief presentation of their proposal before you deliberate. So if I could hand over to Jodie and Richard.
Yes, thanks, Maddie. Thank you, Chair and members, for allowing us to speak tonight to give a short presentation on the Monopoly. So my name is Jodie Rago, and I'm a resident on the committee, and
I'm Richard Torrey, and I'm the chairman of the committee. I'm the one who sent the original letter to Councillor Goodale. For the purposes of this, Jodie will present the actual 5-minute presentation. I'm here to help answer any questions that you might have from the presentation.
That's great. So I will share. So since the original appendix letter was sent to the chair back in February, Boston Big Local has been working with Winning Moose on the design of the Monopoly board, and we want to share you some of the concept drawings and artwork of the Monopoly board tonight, so you get a good idea of what the board will look like in principle. So if I share my screen, and hopefully if I can get it up, and can everyone see that okay?
Yeah, can now.
Yeah, that's great. Councillor Goodale. So we're hoping that Boston Monopoly is going to be joining a ever-expanding group of city editions of Monopolies around the world. So we have got a Cape Town edition, and there's also Edinburgh edition here. So this gives you a good idea of what the board will actually look like. So we have got a snapshot of our board, and here's a quick sneak peek of one of the corners of the Monopoly and a colour set. So we've got on one of the corners in the light blue, we've got Hussey Tower and Prescott Hall, and on the green one, we have got an educational theme around with Boston College, Boston Grammar School, and Haven High Academy represented on the board. So all the property sets will be themed around landmarks within Boston. So these will include community gatherings, historical buildings, as you can see on the left, memorials, green spaces, historical shopping lanes, entertainment and education, as you can see on the right, and also public spaces. So that is what the board will look like. And you can see from the chance and community chess spaces there that we have got a theme of around silhouettes as the background to it, and these silhouettes are grade 1 listed buildings within the town. As part of the game, we are also investing in bespoke Boston Monopoly tokens as well, and so we have got six unique tokens specifically for the Boston game, and these are from left to right. So we've got a medieval cog ships, and that is to represent Boston's Hanseatic trading links. We have a swan, which represents a historical feather trade that was in Boston. Obviously, the stump, which is obviously our most iconic building. We have a marathon runner, and that was representing the new Boston Marathon, but also the previous Seabank Marathon. So we've got quite a history of marathon runs throughout the town. And we have a tractor to represent our agricultural industry, and a Puritan hat to what obviously linked in with history with the Pilgrim Fathers as well. These are the prototypes of what's shown. They are in production at the moment, and so there will be part of the set. As part of the board, we will be introducing having a QR code on the back of the board, and people can scan that QR code, what takes people to a website, to our Boston Big Local website, was have a dedicated page on Boston Monopoly, and we'll explain a bit more about the history of why we chose these tokens, and but also a history around the buildings and properties what we'll have on the board on that website, so people can go on there, have a look to read about the history of the town. So going on to the community chess and chance cards, what feature heavily in Monopoly. So all cards has been designed with a Boston theme to them, and have been rewritten to have a Boston centric theme as well. So one of the chance cards, as you can see here, is you go on the tower experience to see the town from above, and you take a trip to St. Botolph's Church, the stump. And you can see on the right hand side the chance card, the back of the chance card with the silhouette on the back of the stump, the windmill, I think the Guildhall's in there as well, and a couple of the bridges as well on there. And this theme also features on the chance of community chess spaces, as you've seen on the board, but will also feature on the back of the property cards and also the community chess cards as well. And finally, as part of the package, our winning moves are the main designers of the board, and they are the ones who've got the license to do Monopoly games across the county from Hasbro, who are the main producer of the game. So we, as part of the package, Winning Moves, we'll be working with Winning Moves in developing the launch of the game later in the year, and you can see some of the aspects of what they've done in the past. So you can see they have had a large board game produced, and they go out and play the game at an event. You'll also see the Mr. Monopoly come out, and he will be there to hopefully interact with the children, but also visit some of the retail venues who'll be having the game, and also some of the historical sites as well. And so that will be hopefully around August, September time. We hope we have the Yorks away. Obviously, this will very much depend on COVID restrictions and things like that of how large we'll have the event. And finally, just how Boston charities will benefit from the game. So all monies, so that's every penny of the sale, that's all £29.99 will go towards local charities and community groups within the Btac area, as listed within our letter. And we're hoping to have pre-sales of the game as well, will also take place, and we're hoping to sell on at Christmas markets and market stores as well, leading up to Christmas. So this will also benefit charities and groups within the area who do not necessarily have a retail arm as well. And you can see on the right, depending on the level of investment, is ultimately what the donation to charities of the game is sold at. So if you invested £5,000, your investment will actually be worth around £6,600, and that's around a 32% increase on your level of initial investment towards the game. And thank you for listening. So we're more than happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jodie. Thank you, Richard. Yes, Yvonne.
If Btac decide not to award grant, what other way have you got of funding this project?
We have, because of the timescales involved, we agreed that we would be prepared to finance the minimum number of 1,500 units. So we have got the money capable of doing that. The purpose of offering the deal to Btac is that as part of it, we've got a very short window for letting them know any changes to the box and board. And if you contribute towards it, we will include the Btac logo on the box, which is the one bit that can be changed at the last minute. And in all of the launch materials, Btac will then be listed as contributing towards the production, and that, so you can use that to say that your money is going, all of your money, as with ours, is going to local charities and organisations. We've based the model on the playing cards that we produced last year, if some of you may have seen them, where we paid for everything. We donate them to a list which is in the letter. We had to nominate 9 distribution centres, and they are the only ones allowed to sell, apart from like ourselves. And so whatever they sell at £29.99, they get to keep the full £29.99. So it's a donation to those organisations, but it's done in such a way that rather than simply handing them money, we give them the games that promotes the town and gives the money to those organisations. Any sold by big local at such as the Christmas event, that money will be donated to other charities that don't have their own dedicated sales outlets.
Yeah.
That's so at the end of the day, the final cost at £29.99 each will be just short, a few pounds short of £45,000 being donated to the different charities around the town. But we're trying to get more than one bite out of that cherry by making a game so that it promotes the town at the same time as giving money to those organisations.
Yeah.
And we just thought that you would.
And if I ask another question, Richard, please.
Yeah.
Chair, you mentioned the cards, but also I've been looking online today at the cost of Monopoly boards,
Yes.
and the price that you've got fits pretty much in the middle of the better quality ones. But what I want to know is now, you mentioned the cards. How many packs of cards approximately have you sold?
We've approximately sold, we had an original print of 1,000, and we've mostly sold 800. The ones that haven't sold are basically places that weren't able to sell online during the lockdown. So in fact, we gave 100 to the Guildhall, and as I understand it, they managed to sell 3 packs before lockdown 2 closed it all up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Woodley, still first.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Tory.
Yeah.
Referring to the game, there are 4 stations on the original game.
Yes.
Are you going to have 4 different versions of Boston Station?
No, we've picked the 4 Grade 1 listed buildings in the town.
Right.
So the Stump, the Windmill, the Guildhall, and Fidel House. And we've got a silhouette version of those 4 buildings, and they and the 2 what were utilities on the original board are the 2 bridges, the Swing Bridge and the Sluice Bridge, Railway Bridge, and all of those have got silhouettes, and they are represented on the board by silhouette. And those silhouettes you saw on the back of the chance cards are the same silhouettes being used to create a theme through the game.
And is the parking Boston Borough Council parking rather than Lincolnshire County Council parking? The free parking.
The 4 corners, unfortunately, the 4 corners, Hasbro insist must remain as per the standard Monopoly game. But all of the other properties that you can normally buy, we get to put in what we want. That's why we went to the different themes, as I say, such as the 3 educational establishments in the main ones in the town, and that's what we've worked to for production.
Yeah. This project has my full support because we need to do everything we can to promote Boston. So I'm not a great fan of Monopoly, but it does promote the town. So everything we can do to promote Boston, we need to do. So the project has my full support. Thank you, Mr. Tory.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Griggs, Martin, please.
Yeah, I'll just speak directly about this one. I'm torn, if I'm honest. I like the idea, and I agree completely with what Councillor Wood has said. We need to support the town and support getting word of the town out there. That being said, do we have a financial update of exactly how much that will leave us in the bank? Because I feel that potentially we may have quite a lot of people applying for grants, and we may need excess budget to bridge small charities and organisations to continue throughout what I imagine will remain a tumultuous year for them. with other pots of funding drying up. The question I have for you guys directly though, is I don't understand your BTAC level of investment table on page 13.
Yeah.
Because by my mind, the £40,950 for 1,500 copies is £27.30 per copy. If we're buying them in at £27.30, giving them to the charities to then retain 100% of the profits, I don't get how a £5,000 investment would purchase 220 copies, because by my count that'd be 6,006. And then the added value to charities, if you could just explain that column and how you came up.
Okay, the very simply, which will blur the numbers a little bit, is that we, because of the way we've had to negotiate with the Winning Moves / Hasbro, they don't understand, or initially didn't understand our business model of buying the games and giving them away. It does not make sense to them. So they put some limitations on what we could and couldn't do with the games. And as part of that, if we start talking about partnering as such, they start talking about it being sponsorship, and that changes the rules completely. But they will let us effectively sell games to you, and then you sell them to the public, which is where this 220 and such comes in. And the thing is, to keep the thing simple, we have to pay VAT, and Big Local is not in a position to claim VAT back. So what we're doing for the council is we are paying the VAT contribution. So effectively, for the 220, your 5,000 contribution, you're getting effectively £1,000 worth of VAT on top of your money. And then the 500 is roughly the actual, once you've added the £3, whatever it is per item, that makes it up. And so it does look confusing from that level, but it's because we're having to jump through Hasbro's hoops in order to, because of our desire to give them away to the units. That's effectively how it works.
Do you understand that?
I do understand the VAT makes perfect sense. Numbers of units purchased, it tallies up there. It's the added value to charities. I get that you can't just give them away because otherwise it's seen as sponsorship. Yeah. But I'm still struggling to get, and it's probably my misunderstanding or not heard something you said correctly, but I'm not sure how the added value to charities is only 25% of the value of the order, including what's happening to the other 75% of the sale price.
That is, well, effectively, you're donating if you go for the 5,000 option, you're donating £5,000 to the town, and because of the unit cost and the selling, say the profit, what would normally be listed as profit, is added to your 5,000, plus because we are paying the VAT, it works out that from your point of view, for your £5,000, you're effectively, by buying 220 units, your contribution, say for £5,000, it works out. If you take the final sales cost times 220, that works out at the £1,600 additional. So everything works out. Every single penny of whatever the production cost is goes to the people who sell it, and they get to keep the money towards their charity.
Thank you for your explanation. I'm still missing something. I'm sure you're quite right, and I know that you guys will have had an approach you followed methodically to get to that number. I just personally, I get the level of investment, I get the fact that you're paying the VAT. I still can't get my head around why the added value to charities is so low. So I do apologise for that.
Yeah, well, effectively what it works out is that it's just short of £41,000 for the producing 1,500 games, and at £29.99, the total income will be 44,985. So there is just over £4,000 that will be generated by selling it at £29.99. That is above the cost that we're putting into paying for the game, and then it's just a matter of dividing everything by 1,500.
Yeah. Sorry, I do apologise. So that's the additional value from selling them compared to the possible buy.
So if we sold it at cost price, we would be selling it at just short of £41,000. But at £29.99, it comes.
Yeah, I get it.
£1,000 to it. Sorry, yeah. It's one of those things where we're so close to the situation, we probably don't see the problem that you're seeing.
I've got the same problem as I saw at the presentation. Brian, Councillor Rush.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Can you hear me up there?
Yeah.
I want to put the mask on, if you don't mind. I'm a little confused really, because I'm going to be a bit of pouring a bit of cold water on this. I take the view that it is great to see something expressing the image of Boston. However, I'm a little disappointed, to be honest. Sorry.
Is it possible that you could not use your mask? It's hard to hear you.
I prefer not to, if you don't mind, from my point of view.
It's a matter of personal choice, Brian.
I'm afraid I'm sorry. Heart bypass a couple of years ago. I'm not taking any chances just for the sake of it. I'm sorry. That's all.
Still don't.
Now I've lost my thread really. Okay, so what I am concerned about is if you're going to do a game like this, and it's a traditional game, and I enjoy it, and I've got a copy, and I'm sure every one of you have got a copy in the house somewhere. Mine's under the bed. I hardly ever use it, to be honest. But I just think that it's a little. The concept is great, but the image of it is a little old-fashioned. And I'd like to draw you back to the little models that you use. I don't know if you can pull them back up again, can you? For the stuff and all of that.
Give me 2 seconds, Brian. I'll be able to get it back up for you. I'll go back. There we go.
Yeah. Can you see that?
I can understand. Yes, I can. Thank you very much. I can understand why you've chosen the models that you have. It goes without saying that they do represent. However, I think if you're going to be looking at a wide audience, a popular audience, then you have to sort of realize or think about the age group of people that you're aiming at. And I find those models, great that they are, and I understand what they are a little boring, frankly. And I don't know whether at this stage you have invested so much money that you can't alter the shape of those, but I do think that it ought to be a little more fun rather than serious. I don't know if you can do that, Jody, but maybe you'll inform me otherwise.
Unfortunately, we can't. It's mainly because I think they're just about into production stage. It would delay the production of the board quite a lot, and we do want it to get it out by October time. And it looks big on the screen. It does the tokens. You have to remember they are only about 1 inch tall when you look at them in a plain.
Well, I will be honest, that did confuse me somewhat. So thank you for that explanation.
Yeah, yeah, they are about 1 inch tall. Ultimately, it looks a lot bigger. So, but I think the detail we have been able to get into, particularly the stump being that sort of tall, I think is quite good considering.
if I can interject then, are you telling me that you've moved along down the road of production already, and therefore the options we've got are quite limited, really, as far as any input from members around the table?
I would say you have some can say on the base of the board. Did you say, Richard?
Yeah.
That's not been.
Well, yeah, the main mover has been the playing pieces, because they take about 30 weeks to actually, once the go ahead has been given, they are made, and they are actually being made in China, and production is starting very shortly if it hasn't already started. Yeah, as I say, the big problem was that if the time scale that the Winning Moves company gave us was that if we wanted our own playing pieces, the total from the moment we said go and paid for the artwork, it was 34 weeks before the games arrive, and that, so their scale is end of September, beginning of October, when it will all arrive. We would have liked to have included you more in the consultation, but we had to sort of commit to how much money we could afford, and set everything rolling at the end of January. So
yeah, I do understand.
Yeah,
I do understand that you're trying to hit sort of winning posts every time. So, and the amount that we're going to be investing, or sorry, you're asking us to invest. I can understand that that's not a massive amount of the investment. However, the coins raised from television, I will not be investing in this because I just think that the time span's against us, and I think there are other things that we could do with that money that would be more beneficial to Boston. So I do apologise.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's right.
Right, Councillor Darren, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you guys for the presentation. It was good. Councillor Stevens has touched on the cards, which is the number you sold is 800, if I'm not mistaken, if that's correct.
Yeah.
And I can see the figures, and I was going to ask the same question as Councillor Griggs, but I will go different ways. Just looking at how many cards you sold is only 800 pieces, and looking at that, it's not probably a great number. Now we are talking about 1,500, which will cost around £45,000. My concern about that is not, I'm not grilling you here or doing anything. I'd rather help you, because I would like to be part of Boston Big Local and help the community in Boston. What I would like to say, do you have any marketing experience of how to float this Monopoly game?
I'll do this one. Well,
I'll do this one, Richard, if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we will be working very closely with Winning Moves, who are very experienced in marketing Monopoly games. They have been doing it for many a year. So they will have a very much a publicity campaign around it, whether that's Facebook, Twitter, social media, all the way to the launch event. This will also be on radio, Lynx FM, we're hoping to get involved in so as well. So we're very much, as part of the package, the overall package is the promotion of the game with Winning Moves. And we also have our dedicated communications person who we have within Boston Big Local, who will also be helping out, and we'll be working very much in partnership in the game. I believe we did say figures around the Yinkin Monopoly, what was done a few years ago. And in the first 3 months, they sold around 2,600, if I remember correctly, in the first 3 months up to that Christmas period. So they're very much snowing. The things with the cards was that we launched them just before the lockdown before Christmas. So a lot of the cards were actually sold online, and we have now just relaunched in that campaign around the cards.
Yeah, this is what.
Okay.
Also, this is also one of the reasons why we've chose with the cards and with this is that they are products that don't have a shelf life. As such, they haven't got dates on them that make it all. So when we donate them to the different organisations to sell, they're not going to be lumbered with stuff. A, because we're donating them, it's not costing them money, and it's not a product that next year will be out of date. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Richard.
Can I continue,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman? You know, I have reasons for asking you these questions because 800 cards, I don't see it a big number. Now you are going for Monopoly games and you're telling us that it's going to be probably for next year, it will not be that old. For me, I can see that you are trying to sell probably the history of Boston in the card, so it will be fun and learning something about Boston. I totally agree with Councillor Rush when he said we weren't consulted about what we have done. I think we should have been consulted and see what we can do with you and help you and work together. I'm not saying that I will not support you, but it just, for me, I would like to go beyond that. I think the Monopoly games, if they're gonna represent Boston in the right way, I would like them to even to be sold to Boston in America, because we are selling part of our history. We have to be proud of that part. And if we cannot offload it, for example, to America and other countries, or even not just concentrate on Boston and go probably beyond Boston, we can go to Lincoln. We have to sell these things because the turnover will be around 45,000 for 1,500 pieces. If the numbers go beyond that, it becomes a business. It's a concept. So you have to have a proper mechanism to take it through to the next stage. And I would love to see that. I don't mind to work with you, but we have to do that. It's not something that we're gonna promote, sell, give to charities, done and dusted. It has to live for at least a period of time. But thank you anyway.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Yvonne.
I go next.
Oh, you can. I've only got one speaker left, but Councillor Woodruff, and he's indicated for you to go first. So.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Chairman. Well, actually, Councillor Danny rather stole my thunder there, because I was going to ask.
Sorry about that.
No, fine. Ask about Boston, Massachusetts, because there's a great opportunity there, I think, to sell that particular game, and Boston a link there again. If you were prepared to pursue it, I think selling or passing these things around the town is fine. But if you want to promote town, Boston as a venue, we have to be looking at the United States all the time, because that's somewhere which has a great deal of money. Monopoly came from America, didn't it? So we'll be selling it back to them, won't we? It's probably a good thing, isn't it? So, I thank Councillor Danny actually raising the issue. He did much better than I did. It's got more business experience, but I think it's something you could think about.
Yes, I'm allowed to address that, Chair, just quickly.
Well, can you just have Councillor Stevens in? She's the last speaker, and then you can have a 3 more minutes.
Actually, I think you've got the cart before the horse by not getting your grant organised prior to placing the order in China. And as Mr. Troy said, you can fund this project yourself. So on those bases, I'm not going to support you, because I think what you can do, you should do on your own back, because I don't like the way this is going at all.
Thank you, Councillor. Martin, quickly.
Yeah, just a quick one. Big Local does some absolutely fantastic things around town, and obviously he's worked in partnership with Btac on foot. And I slightly disagree with my other colleagues as saying that you should have come to us first, because rightly so, it's your project to do this, please. But to that end, why did you come to us for funding and not just say, we'll take it out of our pot that we have? Because obviously your pot's time bound. I did have a look at your minutes while you were speaking, and unfortunately, I can't find an exact figure of how much you guys have left, but I know obviously you have to spend all your money within a certain time period, and we don't.
Richard, if you'd just like to answer those questions, please.
Well, as far as the money is concerned, the first part of the money came out of last year's underspend. But again, we accept that from the spending side of view, we've got a certain amount of the money, roughly half of our money left with 4 years of our project to run. And the amount that we've agreed to use is equal to one of our big projects that we have put forward, that we have used in the past. We didn't want to go too much more at this time because we didn't want to divert all of our money or a really big amount of our money away to this one project. The other reason, the main reason we came to you is that we thought that it would give the council the opportunity to, Btac, the opportunity to promote the game and be seen to be involved in the project, rather than just being a big local project. And as I say, it will be, if you do choose to support it, then obviously you would be included in all of the promotional things saying that this is being brought to the town and wherever with big local and Btac sponsorship, for want of a better word. Yeah.
And quickly, just to address Councillor Danny's point around selling it to potentially Boston America and selling it like that, we did very early doors pursue of having a joint board potentially of Boston, having a Boston UK and a Boston America with Hasbro. There is actually a Boston America Massachusetts board already designed a few years back, so we won't be able to pursue that. But there is no reason why we couldn't save a few and then bring them along and take them out to Boston America to sell as well. So
Or
very much
selling that, promote it online and sell it online.
Yes. With the cards, we've known that a couple of people from Australia have gotten cards through family members as well.
And family members have sent the cards to Boston America as well.
Yeah,
but,
so.
Okay then. Well, thank you very much, Richard and Jodie. Thank you for that presentation. Do you want to comment any more, Maddie, or can I just go to the recommendations? Do you have anything you used to add?
No, there's nothing more from me, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Look, I mean, I think we've looked at the Monopoly board enough. Does any member wish to comment on any of the other awards? Yes, Martin.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
That's all right, no.
My voice by the end of the meeting. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I think there's some absolutely fantastic projects here. So I'd like to move a recommendation that we support all of the ones recommended to us by the Small Grants Committee. And unfortunately, with great regret, we don't support giving money to Boston Big Local for theirs, because whilst I think it's a fantastic project and I know they do wonderful work in the community, I think, as I think it was Councillor Rush said, our money could be better spent. And we have to justify our spending to taxpayers. I feel that with the current climate, if I said, yeah, we spent some of your money buying Monopoly boards, we take a bit of a kicking. So
I think it should be split.
I will second.
Well, thank you, Yvonne. I mean, it wouldn't come out of the small grants part. It would come out of the job. I'm sorry, Sam. I'm just clarifying. It wouldn't come out of this part. Sorry. Yeah, we've moved. Yes, and Councillor Danny.
Well, what I will suggest, probably we'll put an amendment to the proposition of Councillor Briggs. Probably we should award them the first amount of money and see how it will work, and then we can make a decision towards, because we have few here. I would like to have somebody to second me and see how it works, because that's a proposition for the promotion of the town. So we can monitor it and see how it works, and then we go from there.
But what would be the purpose of that, Councillor Danny?
Well, just to see how the monopoly will be sold and how it will work. If it's working good and it's beneficial for Boston and get us some grants on, like I said, in Lincolnshire and probably around the world, if we can, then it will be good. We don't, you know, if it doesn't work, then we don't have to go further.
I think maybe I should come in there. The way the cards have been printed,
Yes.
1,000, and over a period of time, 800. That's no business. That's, and I have no confidence that it would be any better.
I don't think it's actually meant to be a business, to be honest with you. It's not a business, it's just to raise money for charity. But I mean, that's by the by. I think we're confusing two things here. But that's okay. So Councillor then has moved that we
do an amendment, give the first tranche of what they need, the £5,000. See how it will work, because it's just for charities in the end of the day. I was seconded by Councillor Woodliffe.
Chairman?
yes, I'm listening, Yvonne. Sorry, Jeanette, I'm listening.
Sorry, yeah, I just wanted to say that that can't be accepted as an amendment because it's negating the meaning of the original proposal.
Yes,
it could be voted on if the original proposal falls.
Yeah, thank you.
Chairman, are we going to vote on the first 10 or so and deal with that, or are we going to do the whole thing vote?
The recommendations are, we can take the recommendations one at a time if you wish.
Yeah.
And it has already been proposed and seconded.
I appreciate that, Jeanette, I appreciate that, but Councillor Woodliffe was asked if we actually take the recommendations separately, which I don't believe does negate the present motion.
No, Chairman, I was just going to point out to the committee that there is a proposal on the table already and it should be dealt with. It's been proposed and seconded.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. So we'll have to take them all in one, then I'll prefer take them all separately. But we have a proposed and seconded from Councillor Griggs that we, well, if you want to read that out, that we accept the grants awarded by the Small Grants Committee. We note the information on grants to be held from round 3, 1920 to go back to funds, and that the committee doesn't support the request from the big local. Okay. All those in favour of that proposal now, please show.
That's 1, 2, 3. Could members hold their hands up high so I can actually see?
There is just 3. Yeah.
There is
All
just
those
3. Thank you. That's 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, 3 hands again.
Right. So that means me. So I will support the second motion then. That's against.
Yes. Thank you.
So right, so then that proposal has fallen then. So we'll look for a second proposal, which will be Councillor Danny's proposal, which has been moved and seconded, to award 5,000 to basically follow the same path, but as where the big local part comes in, to award £5,000. We all okay with that?
Yes.
Right. All those in favour of that motion, please show.
Yeah.
That's 2. All those against?
There's 3, I think.
It's all right, there's 3. All those against? 4. That one's clearly lost. So do we have a proposal at all then?
I propose that we take the amendment separate, the recommendation separately, so as to reach a
Thank you, Councillor Griggs. I will do that.
I need a seconder for that.
No, I'll second it. Fine. No problem. Right, recommendations are that the committee endorses the recommendations made by the working group in respect of the eligibility of the applications presented. All those in favour? That's 1, 2. That's clearly carried, Jeanette.
Thank you.
Anyone against? No one. Okay, thank you. Second is that the committee note the latest grant, so it's just noted. Option 3, that the committee considers the Boston Big Local request for investment. So I'll look for a proposer on that one. What do we say? We need a recommendation. I haven't got one. It's just that we.
Chairman, if I go back to my recommendation, then we.
That's already fallen.
Right, so what's the recommendation?
Well, I haven't got one. That's why I'm asking for a proposal.
Review.
Yes.
Anyone wish to propose it? If not,
Or should we bring it on the?
if not, I'll have to defer it.
I think it should be deferred. Yeah.
And I will seek a guidance from the officers in Boston Big Local what they wish to do. Because without a recommendation, I've no other course. So
I'll propose to defer it.
I'll have to propose that it's deferred.
I second that.
All those in favour of deferment of the last item? One,
Chairman,
two,
could I just ask for the, sorry to interrupt, could I just ask for the reason for the deferment?
because I've got no proposals to move on, Jeanette.
Right. I just thought to be clear to the our guests.
Yeah, well, I have no way forward, and the only thing I can suggest is that we actually have a word with Boston Big Local and see what they wish to do.
Right.
I'll have to bring it back to the next meeting.
Further information.
Further information.
Exactly.
Yes. Can I ask one question?
Yes, Councillor.
I will just ask the big local. When will you get your first pack? Because so far you said at the end of January, they made an order already. So when will you get the first pack?
The first, sorry, I couldn't hear.
Sorry, we couldn't hear that.
We heard first, I didn't hear.
When you get delivery of your first pack, when you've ordered.
It will be end of September, beginning of October.
But
the production has to be done by, we need the artwork decided by tomorrow. That's why we've gone. So
Well, you've already
it
decided.
needs to be made if you want the logo on the board by tomorrow. Just because of the time.
it's
Okay then. Yeah.
To be fair, they've left it too late. That we run out of time for any kind of a supportive sort of contribution. So I think we have to defer it on behalf of our group. We mustn't get carried away with BBL.
No, I have to defer it for a reason. I mean, if it's going to be too late, it's too late. There's no point in deferment.
And we could have used a lot of people to make the icons. We could make it out of wood or something nice in here.
We can't, they've already done it. It seems to me that the committee's basically saying that they don't want to follow it, but they don't want to vote not to follow it, just in case they don't want to look mean, but we're not going to do it anyway.
Can I suggest it just be noted then, Chairman?
Well, that's all I can suggest. So we note the request and leave it at that.
Respectfully, we have left it too late. Coming to.
Well, it's probably a bit more my fault with the elections and everything. I couldn't get it to the committees sooner, but
COVID-19.
well, COVID-19. So on that, we'll just have to. Everybody I'll ask the committee if they just wish to note this. All those in favour of noting. That is clearly carried, Jeanette.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard and Jodie, for that presentation. Thank you, Maddie.
Thank you, Mr.
We'll
Chairman.
move on.
Yeah, thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Jodie. Yeah.
I'll see you soon. Thanks.
Yeah,
thank you.
Right. Item 2 then, which is the Empowering Healthy Communities Programme. Btac's funding allocation report, which is on page 17 of the pack, and Michelle Howard will present. Michelle, can I ask you for your presentation, please?
No problem. Evening, everybody. So just by way of some background, in January this year, Boston Borough Council was awarded £484,000 to deliver a 12-month programme of work, which really is intended to be able to support our communities through the pandemic, beyond the pandemic, really focused on their health and their well-being. The programme itself is quite ambitious. There are a lot of strands to that, and we've briefed members of the Borough Council on that as we've gone through. As part of the programme, we allocated £20,000 to Btac so that Btac could take a decision as to how the committee might want to support residents within the Btac area. That funding is already in the Btac budget, and what we've done for this evening is just give you some options for consideration really as to how you might wish to allocate that funding. So the options that I've set out are section 4 of the report, but just to give you a summary of those. The first one is an evidence-based proposal. It was based on our experience of delivering the programme to date, the evidence of need within the community, and that is linked to digital literacy and language support. So there's evidence to suggest that that residents have struggled to access IT and to be able to afford the internet connectivity, and that some people have struggled sort of with accessing that and then needing some guidance to be able to do what they need to do online. And that's been really important during the pandemic. But linked to that, we've also evidenced that sometimes the language barriers can create an additional complexity for people within our communities. So there has been a proposal submitted by a local charity for consideration. But more than anything, we were keen to understand if members wish to support the concept around digital and language as a way forward. The second option that we've included within the report is that Btac may wish to put the £20,000 into an existing small grant scheme to be able to allocate the funds in the way that you normally do, but to do so with the health and wellbeing focus. So I have set out in the report at section 3.4 the criteria for any funding that's allocated through this wider programme. That criteria has not been set by the Borough Council. That criteria is set by MHCLG and forms part of the grant agreement that we have agreed with them. I hope that having read that, you can see that there is quite a lot of flexibility within that. Really, it's about being able to make sure we're supporting health, wellbeing, community resilience and community empowerment. In terms of the commitments that we have made to government, we have advised that we have committed the funding to each strand of the programme. So government are aware that we have committed the £20,000 to Btac. We are required to be able to demonstrate a good level of delivery with every strand of the programme by the end of June, although we are confident that every strand of the programme is developing at the pace we would like. But it is recommended that we do start the work to deliver on the preferred approach of Btac within the next 4 to 6 weeks to make sure that we are compliant with that at all times. Just for clarity, the outcomes achieved through the funding would be reported to a programme board, the Empowering Healthy Communities Programme Board that is in place, and we will also be reporting the outcomes to MHCLG. We do that on a monthly basis, sorry. So what we're asking this evening is that Btac members consider those options within the report and agree a preferred approach to allocating that funding. And just to give you some assurance that officers within the programme would support the delivery of whichever option you prefer. So I'm happy to take any questions at all on that. I don't know if Nick, you wanted to say anything else on that before I hand back to the chairman?
No, thank you, that's fine.
Okay, I'll finish there then, Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Right, members, I think you'll agree that it's a good award, a brilliant award for the borough, really. £20,000 for Btac. I mean, I agree with Michelle to bring the links digital to this group. As my view, for what it's worth, is that obviously this money is better to be in a pot rather than spread thinly, shall we say. But it's up to, obviously it's up to Btac. It's the money awarded to this committee. Obviously we do have the option of putting it to our small grants to be awarded. We can also, if the members have a project they would like to see it go to, we can also do that. This is not the £1,000 per member. This is a different fund. Yes, Yvonne.
Chairman, I'm very much in favour of option 2, and I would look to support on that.
Yeah, I'd like to support option 2. So I'd rather see it spread out rather than just sort of like focused on one sector. £20,000 between loads of different charities will have a greater effect, I believe.
That's fun.
Well, I'm not quite sure what the objective is really, but I would say that ensuring that everybody in this area is proficient in the English language, both in writing skills and in spoken language, has to be a priority, because there's a significant proportion of community here who I don't think really grasp the essentials of the English language. people who come from other parts of the world who are here. And we're going to create an integrated community. We need to be sure that everybody is competent spoken word and in the literacy and in the written word. People have to be able to read and speak. Otherwise, you can't communicate. If you can't communicate, create isolation. So you have to break down the isolation by ensuring that everybody can read and speak in the English language. And I think that, however this money is split up, whatever it is, there has to be the number one target to break down the barriers that exist inside the town. We have to ensure that everyone can speak and read English. It's a priority. That's what I'd like to do with that, Chairman.
Thank you. Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Woodley. One of the issues we've got in the town is a sort of a misunderstanding. There's a sort of a gap in the understanding between all the different visitors we have here. And I know there are different opinions about the way the town evolves. Yeah. That's not my brief. My brief is to try and make it as easy as possible for those people that do visit us to actually integrate. And we seem, I'm sorry to say, but we seem to be the problem with integration. I think that we need to be investing in those people that have come here. I think we need to get to learn to understand what it is they aspire to. And we need to make life much easier for that group. So I'm all for going along with Councillor Woodliffe on this one. And I think we need to be very careful what we spend it on, but it needs to be targeted towards a specific result. And that result has to be to include between the groups. And I would think that every penny would be well spent.
Thank you, Brian. Mr. Mayor,
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do echo and I do support Councillor Woodliffe and Councillor Rushworth. Integration is very important. That was my big issue when I arrived to Boston and I was on question time and I talked about integration. I think the money will be well spent if we help these people. But let's not forget that these people have to make an effort to learn English as well. Mm-hmm. And I will give you an example, and this is from my experience. If you go and you would like to live in Sweden, you have to learn Swedish language within 6 months. They will follow up with you. If you fail in your exams and your work in the class, they tell you have no place in Sweden. So you have to learn the language. I know that in Great Britain, we're having a lot of soft spots. We do give a lot to people, but sometimes people don't give you back. If we're going to spend this money, we have to make sure that these parents or the newcomers can learn English in the right way and communicate. Then we can cut out, translations. We can cut a lot of things and the middlemen. It is hard for them because they keep up only with their own community sometimes. So I think for us as councillors and as Btac, and we're on the town, we should be able to create probably certain mechanisms where we can bring these people to us. And I give an example. When you go to the Polish bakery, some of them they speak English, but some of them they don't. And I think we should find a way to tell them or to advise them that you have to communicate with anybody who's coming to buy a loaf of bread or a cake, and they have fantastic bread. So this is where I see it myself. We can support it. It will be well spent. Integration will be good because there is a lot of burden on their kids. Their kids, they become the translators and they translate the problems of the house, the problems of the parents, kids, they're on their own in their houses. So all of these things, sometimes it gives you a cocktail that people that are just coming here to make money, but they're forgetting that there is rules in the country. And I will support both Councillor Rush and Councillor Woodley for this, this comment you put. I'm very pleased to hear that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah. Mark, that's fine, no problem.
Obviously, as I alluded to earlier, I won't be voting. However, I still will give you my opinion and do with that what you will. There's some absolutely fantastic stuff going on in the project as a whole, and a lot of that is focused around the getting people on side who aren't necessarily don't feel included within the communities and trying to break down the language barriers. And we've got quite a lot of partners within the organisations running the projects that are really focusing on the getting people's English language skills, understanding of rules, customs, etc., to the forefront of people's minds. My personal opinion is that whilst the digital aspect seems like a good idea, it's not focused wholly on translation or getting people to master English. It's focused on lots of different things. And again, whilst I think they're all valid outcomes, I think there are other organisations in the town that also do the same thing. We've just approved grants that have now taken our small grant fund down to £6,768 for the remainder of the year. And I imagine we'll have lots of community groups who promote healthy living, either coming forward trying to build communities back up of people who don't want to go out of the house because they've been sat inside for a year and a half and they're genuinely scared of it now, or clubs that were running but don't have the same numbers of people that are going to need our support, and they achieve health outcomes for our communities. Yeah, if we look at some of the ones we had tonight on the grants form, that was so that organisations that help us live a healthier lifestyle can continue operating. So I personally would rather we went down the second route of having the ability to support the smaller community groups that achieve localised outcomes in our particular wards. But again, I won't be voting on it, so you can ignore what I said.
Well, no, everybody's. I mean, I appreciate you. It's it falls down to you in a lot of ways. I mean, obviously, this is digital technology. One of the things which should I say, drew me to this was it wasn't only for the migrant community; it was for the local Indigenous community as well, because it's mainly helped or to assist people who have no access to digital communication and either have no access or don't understand how to use it. And I think this lockdown has actually shown a lot of us how, well, especially me, how very low my knowledge is and how very small my skills are. And I think if there's a lot of people don't even have, what shall I say, less skills than I have, how difficult it must have been for those. And that's really what drew me to this programme. Obviously, it links in with the language lab, which Haven High was happening at Haven High. And one thing, but it just that my view was it would, rather than dissipate it, it would be better off in one focus rather than spread out. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, it's down to members. We will have £1,000 to each member coming to the council to spend in there for their wards or community grants, and that's, to my mind, what I would hope would go into the small grant scheme part rather than this one. But I'm happy to accept whatever the committee feels is the right way forward. I mean, originally we thought it would be very constrictive, but as Michelle has indicated, it's we can be very creative in what in how we use the money, or groups can be creative in how they use the money. So it's down to you, really.
Can we ask Councillor Griggs to expand upon it, because you've obviously got more experience with this, so perhaps you can give us more advice.
Well, I'll give you as much. Is there any particular questions you'd like me to attempt to answer? And if I'm sure if I can't, the ladies on screen will be far more qualified than me to answer that.
Right. So, what about the investment in language skills for certain sections of the population? What are we doing in those areas?
So, as I'm sure you've all seen, and Mr. Chairman alluded to, we've got the language lab at Haven High, which isn't expressly for the students of Haven High. It's to just help members of the community learn the language, because we all know the first barrier to integration is not understanding what's going on around you. So, and then there's the PAB Translation Centre also running services, and they do a fantastic job providing translators for different situations anyway. Obviously, we as a council provide some form of translation, usually from PAB, to help assist for any forms to fill in or any situations where we need to communicate with people and they don't understand what they're saying. Yeah, but I would argue that some of the stuff that the PAB and especially the language lab are going through is far less passive. Yeah. It's far more focused on going and getting people engaging. And again, they're driven by the funding that we're getting as part of the community fund. It has to be spent within a certain amount of time. Therefore, the onus is on those organisations to go out and find people who need those services.
And how are they doing that?
All sorts of ways. I'm sure Michelle could go on for hours and so could Nicola, about how they're trying to engage different sections of the population. And some of that's focusing on clients they've already got and liaising with landlords and liaising with different agencies that previously they haven't done. And this project's been really, really helpful in terms of building relationships. So one of the things we're doing now is liaising with community nurses, because they have, a lot of people look at the council and go, don't want to speak to them, it's the council, I've got no interest in engaging, never going to happen. Whereas when it's someone like a community nurse saying, oh, by the way, did you know this service is available here or whatnot, people are more prone to listen. It's the same way, you know, I'm a filthy Tory, regardless of what I say. But I'll say something and some people will literally disagree with it because of where the information came from. It's the same for every single person. You know, you're a teacher, were prior to retiring, obviously that's a field that I've gone into. Some people ignore what you say because the teacher said it, whereas, so it's about where the information is coming from and being able to attack, I use that word loosely, but not physically attacking, but provide the information from as many different channels as possible is crucial to being able to engage every person as much as we can. So I personally feel the extra value added by Project One isn't as great as the value added that I feel is option 2. But again, that's to each and every councillor to decide. If you feel that the added value is great from option 1, as the chairman does, then vote that way. And if not, vote the way I think. But again, you know, it's to each member to decide based on what their opinions are.
That's very good. I'll follow your expert advice.
Thank you, Eric. Please, somebody listens to me.
Okay. Anyone else got any questions to ask Michelle? No. Have you got anything you wish to add, Michelle?
Of course not.
No, I think that's all been covered, and I say we've included all of the criteria in the report there. So I think it really is just down to member preference on this one.
Okay, then. Thank you very much, Miss. I mean, obviously, I'll take the as it was recommendations as we were put. Obviously, Yvonne has moved that we. Well, there's not actually option 2, it's just an option I put. It was that we put to 20,000 for small grants.
Right, I'll second that.
Well, it's already been seconded.
Oh, right, please.
Okay, then, so all those in favour of that, please show. That is clearly carried. Jeanette?
Thank you, Chairman.
Can't see you, but I know you're there somewhere.
I'm here.
Thank you. Right, and obviously the second part is that delegates the authority to excuse me, to basically to Michelle the portfolio holder me to make sure it goes to that small grant part. Is that agreed? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. You can get back to putting your little ones to bed now.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Right, then we move on to part 3 of the agenda then. Safeguarding Boston's economy, task and finish group recommendations in relation to Central Park security. Report starts on page 43, the pack of the pack. I mean, I know members were wanting this earlier, but because of the elections and one thing and another, and getting reports together, it's taken a little while. But here we are. I had hoped to get the park toilets in this report as well, but that report is not completed yet. So we have just the safeguarding of the park, a safety for that recommendation to come. So it's down to you, Christian. Right.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and good evening to members of Btac. I will only provide a very brief introduction to the report today because you've got it in your agenda pack, as the Chairman has pointed out to you. Members of this committee will be very familiar by now with this piece of work that was undertaken by a task and finish group under the auspices of the Environment and Performance Scrutiny Committee that was looking at regulating and safeguarding Boston's economy a very thorough and comprehensive bit of work done by that task and finish group, which was reported to and approved by Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and then subsequently the 13 recommendations that the task and finish group developed were reported to and approved by Cabinet, with 2 of the recommendations being delegated for consideration by Btac. And members will be aware at the last Btac meeting that you agreed to accept and consider those 2 recommendations that were delegated from Cabinet and which are in front of you in your report today. Essentially, the 2 recommendations relate to security of Central Park in Boston. The recommendation 12 relates to locking of the Central Park gates overnight to address ASB in the park, and suggesting that a trial of 4 months may be a potential way forward for the committee to consider. And recommendation 13 related to exploring security arrangements in the park to prevent antisocial behaviour. There are 4 outline options that we're inviting Btac to consider this evening. 2 of those options 2 and 3, officers are recommending to committee that are not taken forward any further for the reasons set out in the report. That leaves for consideration option 1 and option 4. Option 1 relates to employing a security firm to provide a locking and unlocking service for the park. And the second part of the option is around employing the same firm to also provide a security patrolling presence in the park. The costs quoted in the report are an annual cost. So bear in mind, if you're considering a trial of 4 months, then the costs will be reduced by 2/3 for those option 1 proposals. The other option that we're asking you to consider is employing 3 additional ASB officers to patrol the park and provide the locking and unlocking service. And again, the costs are set out in the report at 4.10. These are outline proposals that we are inviting members to consider this evening, and to give officers some steer as to which, if any of them, you want us to take forward to a more detailed business case. The final bit of your report, section 5 onwards, is a very comprehensive summary from Inspector Fran Harrod, who's on the call this evening, should you have any questions. But Fran has set out very clearly there her views and those of the police in terms of what I would consider to be broad support for some solution going forward to improving security in Central Park. So the recommendation before members this evening is that Btac consider the options set out in the report and delegate to myself, in consultation with the chairman of Btac, the leader portfolio holder, and also the section 151 officer, authority to implement the options selected. So I'll leave it there, Chairman. Happy to answer any questions. As I said, Inspector Fran Harrod's on the call, and also Peter Hunn, my Community Safety Manager. So any questions that committee wish to address to us, then one of us will answer those. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Christian. Martin, Councillor Good.
Thank you very much. I'm slightly disappointed. I've never, ever criticised an officer of the council or an employee of the council. However, I'm pretty sure, and I do apologise if I'm incorrect, Christian, but I'm pretty sure that at the last meeting where we discussed it, I suggested an approach where we hired an additional CCTV operative to, as I mentioned, we'd upgraded the cameras in the park. So I'm well aware that our current guys are absolutely fantastic. So not knocking them at all. And I appreciate that they have a lot of cameras to try and keep track of, and that makes it somewhat hard to do. But when we're looking at options that cost in excess of £100,000 compared to a job that we advertised for not long ago that we were offering 18,000, so call it 26,000 with on costs, that's 4 times the price. So we could have had, my preferred route would be an additional CCTV operator, because I feel that locking the park, especially after everyone's been locked up for ages, my personal view is I think it's a pointless task. Those who want to get in the park at night time will still get in the park at night time, as I did and many other people did as teenagers. I was up to just normal stuff, kicking the ball around and not being too much of a trouble causer. At least that's how I perceived it at the time. But those who want to get in will get in. Those who want to get in and, for good reasons, and then can't because we've had to pay someone to come and lock it up, what a waste of a glorious facility. If you finish work at 5 o'clock, it's a nice day, you want to take the kids to the park for a picnic and whatnot, and you go, oh, that big area of grass in the centre of town's locked. Why? What's the point? Whereas to have an additional CCTV operator or a couple of CCTV or whatever employed, that would not only have benefits for the residents around the park, because again, we obviously have to be mindful about the residents that directly border the park and making sure that they're able to enjoy life and not be nuisanced too much. But it would also have wider benefits for other areas of Boston that have cameras that could be viewed and monitored more regularly. And so to my mind, that would be the approach to go forward. And whilst I appreciate that Fran's report is in depth and is very useful, and it says they wouldn't normally attend noise pollution complaints, but obviously due to COVID. But my understanding is if someone's blasting a boombox at 3 in the morning, that's antisocial behaviour, regardless of which way you could be kept. That then becomes a police matter. It's not the same as somebody in the house playing loud music that you can report to the council, we can investigate, install sound monitors. If it's a group of troublesome youths, should we say, in the park, being a nuisance at 3 in the morning and disturbing residents, that is the definition of antisocial behaviour, and therefore it's the police's job once they're alerted to it, because again, obviously they can't do it if they're not alerted to it. But if we've got the additional facilities to alert them to these things, then obviously it's the police's job to police. So that would be my preferred approach.
Thank you, Mark. Yes.
If you wish to make a proposal, Councillor Griggs, I'd be happy to second it. I think it's a very good idea indeed.
I'll let us and then I'll propose it.
Because hopping over fences is never a problem for me when I was a youngster. And I'm sure that's true of other people in here, but I won't mention any names. If people want to get in that park and cause mayhem, they'll do it.
I think we should have said it before what Danny.
Well, we are. It's Councillor Williamson to make his point, the same as you are, right?
So anybody wants to hop over a fence can do so. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Since I've been,
That's all right, Councillor Bush is next, but
yeah.
I mean, we haven't as much right. No, I've got you. Well, you're on the list first, and I've got Councillor Hasty. So.
Oh, right, fine. Well, I don't mind having a vote, to be honest. Just didn't want to steal Councillor Hasty's thunder.
Well, I don't think you'll do that.
Yeah, I'm a bit concerned really about why we should be leaving the gates open all night. What we have to understand is that amenity is a town for the whole population of the town and beyond, for families to enjoy. Now, no disrespect to anyone in the room that's younger than me. There's not many younger than me. Well, 1 or 2. No, but I do believe that we have a duty to provide a facility and look after it properly for families and those people in daylight hours that use that facility. That is when the amenity comes into its own. If you're going to be talking about leaving the gates open all night, then you're talking about employing someone to do that. So the mess that would be created at night, and we've seen it all ourselves, just walking around Boston on sides of rivers and drains and all of that. And we have to be realistic, to be honest. The amenity of the park is a treasure. It is something that families should all enjoy. It should not be abused. However, the youth of today, no disrespect to them, because we were all young at one time, we're not quite as careful about the way we behave as maybe we are as we get older. But my main concern really is why on earth we would invade the space and the peace and tranquility of those people that live around the park at night. They tolerate, if that's the right word, all of the amenity behaviour that goes on with the skate park and all of that. And to be fair, the park is a treasure now. It really is fantastic. And I'm very proud of whoever did it, you know, I applaud them. So what we have to do is protect that amenity. We have to make sure that amenity is used correctly, respectfully, and it will last a lot longer. I dare bet you that if you left them gates open long enough, you would find that it wouldn't be very long before a lot of damage was done, which the people of this town pay for to repair. I certainly do not support leaving the gates open all night. I don't mind what kind of method you use to lock them up, but I do believe that we have to protect that amenity for the good of the large part of this town population. That is a proposal I'd be putting forward, that we actually do lock the gates at night. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Brian. Neil.
Don't worry, I won't go on too long about it. But I'm constantly getting phone calls of my residents living around the park gates into the early hours in the morning saying there's music playing, they're shouting, they're screaming, there's bottles being thrown around. I've got 4 or 5 residents who are actually threatening to sell up their houses and move out of Boston because of it. Now, they pay their council tax and they don't deserve it. Now, I'm under the impression that if you want to keep your house safe, you do not leave your door open for a burglar just to walk in to make it safer for them and easier. So I put a recommendation forward that we go for option 1, 4.3, to lock the park gates. And I'll leave it at that.
You have a second there for that.
4.3.
Yep. For 16,500 per annum.
That's per annum, yeah. Yes.
Well, when I was reading the papers, I've gone through them all, and I tended to go for option 1 or option 4, but I didn't like the cost. I didn't.
No.
But I like what Martin suggested, because I do remember him putting forward the possibility of having more CCTV operators. But if we went down that road, would the police be there to just we sort of need 2 things. We sort of need the CCTV operators and the patrol to keep whoever they are under control. I think as a committee and as a council, we need to have a stronger line rather than being the soft touch. I think that it's nice to have the park open, but I definitely support more CCTV. And I'm unsure, and I will go with the committee as to whether we actually do spend the 16,500 to have the gates locked at a certain time. If we do go down that road to lock them, I would say that we need it locking at a sensible time, so that the families that want to go and enjoy the green space can do. The couples that want to have a walk round can do, and probably a 10 o'clock at night job to lock the gates, so that, as Neil was saying, for his residents, they've got the peace of mind that after 10 o'clock, the park should be empty. That's the way I would like to go. Just to confuse things.
That doesn't confuse it. Yes.
About Councillor Griggs' idea of an extra CCTV person, you still need someone to go into the park if they're discovered on the cameras to clear them out. And most of the residents I've spoken to, when they've called the police, are all I've called the police. The police have turned up, all of them have run away. The police go, and within half an hour, they're back again. So the only way of stopping it is to lock the gates. Otherwise, they would just go off somewhere else for half an hour and then toddle back. And otherwise, you could have the police turning up, 5, 6, 7 times a night. And every time they turn up for, say, someone having a party in the park, they can't be doing something else, which would be a lot more serious. Or if they're doing something more serious, it's allowed to carry on.
I do remember when I was a girl that they used to lock the gates at 8 o'clock. Now that I think is too soon.
Yeah.
And I think if the gates were to be locked, it needs to be about 10 o'clock, so people can have the enjoyment of the green space.
Dusk till dawn, that's what I always thought it was.
Say again?
Dusk till dawn.
Dusk till dawn, that's what it's supposed to be. But that varies, obviously.
Chairman?
Chairman.
Sorry. Question there.
Christian Allen is indicating, Mr.
Okay, Christian.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry. Thanks very much for that, Jeanette. Just a couple of points that might help the debate. In terms of the CCTV camera provision, obviously Btac have already invested a significant amount of funding in upgrading the CCT provision in Central Park so that it's nighttime capable. So just sort of bear that in mind, that there is actually probably not a great deal more we can do in terms of improving the CCTV facilities that are already available in the park. Peter will be able to add more detail to that. And also to come to the point that Councillor Hastie raised, CCTV is a passive deterrent. It's there to deter activity. It's not active insofar as there's a presence in the park and security or police are there available to address antisocial behaviour as and when it happens. It's effectively a passive deterrent which requires a deployment of officers, and then often the ASB has moved on or ceased to be an issue. The other point of note, which I should have mentioned in my introduction, is that if members do commit to introducing a service such as a security service, that it'll be an ongoing revenue cost, and it is an annual cost. So if members commit to a contract, it will be a revenue cost that will come out of the Btac's budget for as long as the contract is in place. So that's just something to be mindful of.
Thank you, Christian. Excuse me. Thank you. Right. I've got you, Stephen, then. Right, I've got Martin, yeah.
Thank you very much. I completely agree with Councillor Hastie's points and Councillor Rush's. And like I said, the only thing I don't want to do is inhibit the ability of people who are using it for its purpose, regardless of what time that is, to not be able to. So, Chris, a question for you. In terms of locking the park, is it possible to set our own locking times? Because I must admit, when I read it as in, we do what we used to and lock it at 5 o'clock, and what was that to anybody? If there's provision for we can set the times for it to be locked, so it could be 10 o'clock at night and open again at 6 in the morning, I'd be more than happy to support that, because as Councillor Hastie said, it's only fair to his residents, and if he decides he doesn't want to stand there from whoever's residence they end up being at any point, that they should be able to live in peace and not have to worry about it. So I'd quite happily support that if we can set our own locking times that aren't, so long as it's before 8 o'clock and not open again until 8 in the morning, because you've got lots of time then that people aren't using the facilities. And we did invest in the fitness equipment in the park and the skate park. And I know as a teenager, me and my friends Street would be going out to the skate park, and lots of them quite good on skateboards and BMXs. And we didn't go, oh, it's tea time, we best go home and not go out on our skateboards and stuff anymore. But by 10 o'clock generally, we've stopped particularly focusing it. It became more of a just tossing the skate park, not causing any problems. So if you could answer that question first of all.
Yeah, by all means. The quote was not detailed. It is essentially based on 2 hours a day, 365 days a year. So we haven't gone into any detailed discussions with contractors around locking and unlocking time. So members of committee are free to set that if they choose to go down that route at whatever times they wish.
Fair enough. And then secondly, my question is to Peter Hood. Peter, could you tell us if your team, I get that they work really, really hard, and I've been in the CCTV seat, so I know how many cameras you guys have to observe. Would it help in terms of alerting police? Because again, it's not just a case of there's kids in the park phoning police, because, you know, we're not a 1950s village. It's more, you know, kids are misbehaving in the park, or adults, or whatever age range it is, because adults are just as prone to misbehaving as children. And I think that teenagers tend to get worse rap for it, and they're not always the culprits. Would an additional CCTV operative help you guys to alert the police in a more expedient manner? And then finally, once you've answered that, Fran, do you have the capacity to respond to calls when you receive them from our CCTV operative?
Thank you, Councillor Griggs. If I start and let Inspector Howard come in afterwards, I'd bite your hands off, absolutely. We have 200 cameras that covers 4 districts, and we have 2 operators that need to look after those cameras during the night time. So an additional resource, the 3rd operator who could be dedicated to Central Park or all Btac areas that just look from there would be an absolute godsend to the CCTV team, and something that would encourage. What we can't obviously hear, or even CCTV, is we can't hear noise, we can't hear anything from there, so we'd have to obviously rely on residents calling in. But yes, we would be able to obviously see more, and we then would be able to direct the police into the park if there was any reports or any issues from what was observed from there. And obviously I'll let Inspector Howard bring in from there. Lock in the park would be the ultimate option for me, but obviously CCTV, additional retail source or detail source in there would be an ideal situation.
Good evening. Good evening, Chair. Good evening, members. I'm hoping firstly that you can hear me, as I'm attempting this from home, and I'm not entirely sure how good my my link is.
I can hear you very well, thank you.
Super. Firstly, it is a pleasure to be back in the virtual room again. Good evening to everybody. It would be my intention, if you permit, Mr. Chair, to discuss the overall topic at the time at which everybody else has had their say, because I can bring up a host of points all in one and hopefully save everybody time. But Councillor Griggs, in relation to your specific question regards CCTV, all calls for service, however they come in, and that includes CCTV, is graded according to threat, harm and risk. So when we ask the question, are there police to respond to incidents called in by CCTV? Yes, of course there are. If we use it in the context of the park, and there's an almighty fight kicking off in the park, that clearly presents a high threat, harm and risk to those involved and members of the public, so will be urgently graded. If, however, you have a CCTV camera that catches some people in the corner of the park that may be sitting on a bench and having a drink, and that almighty fight is going on somewhere else in the town or in one of the villages, the officers will be attending the fight and not going to the people drinking on the park bench. And it doesn't matter how that call comes in, whether it's via CCTV, 101 or any other means. So hopefully that makes sense.
Thank you, Fran.
If I can just follow on from that, Fran. It was a very tactful answer you gave, and unfortunately there was a true politician's answer and didn't really answer my question. And I appreciate it's a really difficult question for you to answer, because you're exactly right, you have to base it on the threat and harm. So I will rephrase my question. Over the last however long you decide to pick, have you ever struggled to attend in an expedient manner to any incident that has been more severe than someone's weeing in a corner at the park, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, if it's a serious incident, no, of course not. I mean, when we're talking, if we talk about urgent grading, Councillor Griggs, that takes priority above anything else. I'm sure that you've read the report that I submitted in the packs that you've got, which describe the breakdown of urgent priority routine incidents and non-attended incidents, and the nature of some of those incidents, which hopefully answers the question a little bit better for you. But certainly urgent incidents must be attended, and regardless of whether they're in the park or in anywhere else, officers attend urgent incidents. Sometimes, I shall be honest, to the detriment of the more routine incidents that people would obviously want us to pick up as perhaps more of a priority in their area, such as people weeing in the corner. But when it comes to urgency, threat, harm and risk being posed to people, that is one of the most important things clearly that we are there for.
Thank you, Fran. Councillor Rush, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've listened intently to all the views, and I think it's a no-brainer, frankly. I've been advocating that this is it's a beautiful amenity. It's the jewel in the crown for Boston, really. No matter who comes into Boston, it's sitting there under their nose and it's beautiful. The shame is that we've got a couple of buildings around it that maybe haven't been maintained quite as well as they ought to be. But just concentrate for a moment on, you've continually talked about the manning of the security of the park. Yet in here you have got down Magilocks. Now, Magilocks don't get a pension. They don't, what they do is they work every night and there's no issue really. They're a bit expensive on the upfront cost, but much better than having a man on top. And it also means that people will get used to, even those that are in the park, will get used to the time that gate will click. I would suppose I would look to someone else, an expert, to tell me whether or not you can put the magic a timer on each one of the gates, so that what you do is you get a -1, a -2, and suddenly you're locked in, really. So I would rather think that's quite a usual kind of situation. I think it's gratifying to hear Fran mention the fact that that park and anyone invading the park, if it becomes a problem, then they have to respond. I don't ever remember our police letting this town down in any shape or form in any part of the town, no matter how outlandish it was or how unreachable it was. So it's part of their duty, really, and they accept that. Once the gates are locked, whoever's in there is in there. We understand that. But people are responsible. They do know these things. But we're going to have, if we go along with leaving the gates open, we're going to have people in there to all hours of the evening. And unless they're causing a disturbance that is reported, then those people will stay in there and you cannot call the police out for anything like that. But the fact that the gates are locked tells the people in there that time's up. It's time to go. It's time to go home. And it also means that our park is protected right through the wee small hours, as they say. So we've answered a couple of things really. One is that we're having automatic closing. That's up to the public then to learn when that automatic closing will happen. We have a CCTV, which we proposed, where people can see what's going on. And I take the point that there's no sound, but let's remember this. There is a newsreel. There is visual contact. So it's evidence-backed, really. That can be used at some stage to just evidence what's happening. So we've got three tick boxes, really, that I think we cannot afford to ignore. The other option is you leave it open, then you put up with all the carry-on of patrolling, looking after the place, making the amenities safe again, cleaning up, tidying up. For heaven's sake, why would we do that to what I call the jewel in the crown? I think we need to protect that park. I think we need to, the amenity that's been put in there now is much, much higher standard than that I can ever remember being in there. Some people have tried before and failed with 1 or 2 amenities in there, maybe not very visual, but we cannot say no to this. We have to do the investment. And I think it needs to be locked. I think it needs to be automatically locked, and I think it needs to be visual. And that's my 3 presentations really, as far as how we keep that park safe and also keep it a clean environment for our population.
Councillor, thank you. Stephen. Stephen. Well, yes, you.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Well, I take on board what you said, Councillor Rush. I suppose the thoughts in my mind, it's not the only park in town. And if people are not in Central Park, they'll be in your park, which is Woodville Road, or they'll be behind, I suppose, Rosebery Avenue or whatever. These parks around there are open all the time. You can go to any of those at any time. So if we go down the pathway of locking Central Park, we'll be going down the pathway of locking the others. I mean, the residents who back onto Woodville Road Park, they're just as important as the people who are on Tory Street, aren't they? They have the same situation, don't they? In fact, they have a more serious situation, don't we? We know what happened at Woodville Road. We hope that the fencing that's being put up will deter further incursions, but I suspect that if the people who incurred last time turn up again, it won't take them long to get through those, those fences and chainsaws and the rest of it. So my feeling is that I'm quite happy to go down the pathway if people want to have locking on the park. I think that Councillor Martin Briggs' idea of CCTV is an excellent idea, and we've had support there. But we do need to recognise that it's just one park amongst others. And I will say this, I doubt very much whether any of my residents use Central Park. It's 2 miles away, and I don't think many will come down to that. So as someone who's in an area where I think there is insufficient provision for parks and so on, I'm very concerned that too much investment will go into this particular area, when my residents in my area don't have the same facilities. And so that's my view. But if members feel that they want to have locking of the gates, I won't stop it. And if people think that CCTV is a good idea, an extra operative, I will support that. But I do have reservations about this because it is in the centre of town. My residents live 2 miles away. Why would they go to Central Park? There's no reason for it, is there?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, and exactly on that point, Councillor, would you agree with me that the investment at Woodville Park with the new fencing seems to have resolved a lot of issues there, and it's been very, very well used through the day, whereas maybe at one stage it wasn't. So I think you do have to invest in your community.
But it is,
that's the case there.
Yes, Councillor, it is very well used. It's a very popular park, isn't it? There's excellent facilities and so on. But
thank you, Councillor Oates. Thank you.
Thank you. Obviously there's another issue, isn't to do with the incursion. Whether or not those fences will actually stop the incursion, well, I have my doubts about that. But it does present a barrier for the park. You're quite right about that. But that's there present there all the time. The park in my area, or the recreational area, there is no such gates as such. It's open. So, it's just a question of what you want to do. I'm happy to go along with whatever members think. If you feel, Councillor Hastie, it's necessary to lock the gates, I won't vote against it. If that's what your residents think, I'm happy to support that. But I also feel that Councillor Griggs has made a very, very important point about CCTV. And I'm sure that from what Peter Hunter said, we ought to consider that as well.
Well, thank you, Steve. Councillor Danny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will touch on a few points and I will talk from the reality. I think the Central Park, yes, is an idea to lock it. It would be probably, we think it will be safe. But let's not forget, we create our own downfall. Building a skating park there, I was against it. Really good skating. It's good, but it should have been built somewhere else. Leave the park, as Councillor was saying, for people to walk in and enjoy it. It will be much more peaceful and nice. That's one thing. The second thing I will touch on is there is people who are all.
No, Councillor Oates. Thank you.
What I could have said tonight. I'm glad I'm going.
Say that.
Don't rely on that. It was nice to see you anyway, Councillor Oates. Take care of yourself.
God bless everyone.
Thank you.
There is people who are hoovering in the town during the night time. We have to know that. And I've been walking in the town at 1, 3 o'clock in the morning. There is, I think, a group of 20 or 30 people. They're always in town drinking and doing a lot of things. The park at the moment, at certain places, we got the back, it's used as a toilet. And this is the people who use it as a toilet, okay? Now, what they do when the park is closed and locked, they widen the bar. And I think the borough, Boston Borough has repaired some bars and they haven't been widened lately because the park was open. So we're gonna lock it, the bars will be widened, we get more trouble. That's one thing. I will touch here on health and safety. We know sometimes teenagers, they like to play, they're gonna cross, they're gonna go to something, they will find that widened bars, they go in. Now, if something happens, an incident or a fight, or somebody gets stopped, because it's not far ago, probably 2 months ago, somebody got stopped around 5 o'clock. So this is how we're gonna deal with it. We have to think about the fire brigade, ambulances, the police to come there. They have to secure the place. Who is going to have the key to open? Will we have only one gate, probably with the key, and we have to give keys to certain departments, or they have to collect it from somewhere? So this is the question for me. I will support the closing because it will bring a peaceful night to the residents, which is fair enough. I will touch on Councillor Rush. To have it clean, it's a gem in the town. It's a nice place. You can, if you have guests, you can tell them, you know, we can go to the Central Park. It's nice. And this is how I see it for myself. We have to think about the safety of the people inside. If people are locked inside and if something happens, what should we do? Because the burden and liability will be on the Boston Borough Council because the park is closed. So where do we go from there? So this is the few things which I would like to touch on. I would agree on Mr. Hoon, what he said. Probably CCTV will work if we have an extra member who looks after the Btac area and see probably how it goes. I'm not proposing it, but this is the things I just want to touch on. I have seen the figures here, some figures like on page 46, 4.4, 103,000 for 2 security guys. I don't know how we can pay that because it will be 51,000 each. Then you have the recommendation 4.10, 127,200, that's 42,000 for 3 people. So the amount of money is going up and up. We have to seek an option where we can satisfy the residents and we can do a good job for the communities of Boston. As I say, there is a lot of people who will do the damages and we have to repair the damage. Repair the damage. And I think we have to think utterly about these things and agree about something. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor.
That's the reason that I chose the option 1, 4.3 with the security company, because then they can check the park to make sure there's no one stuck in. Over the automated locking system, they'll just automatically lock. Because the security guard, when he locks the gate, he'll be able to see if there's people in there. And if people are going to damage the park or damage the fencing, they're going to do it regardless. So it's either them bending the fence or them trashing inside the park. No one's going to stop that. This won't be a miracle cure, but it'll stop the minor antisocial behaviour that's plaguing the residents around there. And that's why it should be locked.
That's what I say, Councillor. I say, do respect your opinion. As I say, I have seen it. They widen the bars every time you repair them, and we go through that. The bars, I think, is around 20 centimeters between them. So if you add another 10 centimeters, that's 30. I can squeeze myself. I'm not a big guy, but I can squeeze and I can spend the night in the park. But
you can just
almost breaking entry. That's an illegal act.
I totally agree with you.
I think we need to. This is a debate, not a free-for-all. Members can indicate and speak in their turn. Have you finished, Councillor?
Yeah.
Councillor Griggs.
Thank you very much. To sort of bring this to some form of head, I'd like to propose that we go out to immediate recruitment for 1 CCTV operative to operate focused on the Btac area, to not just help the residents around the park, but every resident across Btac and anyone who lives near any of our parks. Following on from that, I'd like a small agenda item adding to the next agenda of Btac, looking at locking the parks, whether we have the ability to lock the parks between the hours of 10 PM and say 5 AM, because generally people around outside of that aren't likely to cause trouble. And in that report, I would like it contained the crime figures like Fran's done now, and she's done a fantastic job of the breakdown. Unfortunately, I think the time scales, because it goes from 5 to the morning, isn't particularly good. So a breakdown of what incidents actually take place at the hours we're looking at proposing locking the parks to actually see whether it'll have any impact. Because realistically, if 99% of all the incidents that have been reported happen between 5 PM and 10 PM, locking the parks at 10 PM is going to have very little impact. But I don't want Councillor Hastie's residents sitting around for months going, I wish Btac could pull the finger out and do something. So I'd quite like it added to the next agenda so there can be a definitive, again, go out to recruitment on CCTV operative at the first available opportunity, which should help mitigate it and reduce it at least a fraction, if nothing else, and give everybody in here as residents a benefit. And then next BTEC meeting look at locking the park gates with specific information around incidents that take place over those particular 7 hours.
Yes,
I've already put a recommendation.
I know, that's fine. I'm just asking people to got it down. It's not a problem. Don't worry about it. We're on top, I think. I mean, the only problem I have with the CCTV or the BTEC influence CCTV operative is that that's a borough council, not BTEC. So although I'm happy for another CCTV cam operative to be employed, I think that should be for the borough council, and that's why it's not in this report. I appreciate that you did ask, but it's a borough council issue, I had assumed you'd be speaking to your colleague Councillor Skinner about it. But but anyway, so I mean that's why it's not actually featured in this report. So to be fair to the officers, it's not anything I asked them to do. So that's my point on there. I mean, I take your point that another CCTV operator and Peter's point would be more than welcome. And obviously, I also take your point that a lot of the CCTV coverage is basically in the BTEC area. Fully appreciate that too, but that's a by the by. I mean, I think what the bit I favoured in the report the most was if we're going to actually go along with this, it is to actually look at the child. From my own point of view, I think the child period would be far better than just committing ourselves to a complete lockdown. Then we could actually see all the things which Martin is talking about.
Sorry, I meant to say a year-long trial for the locking.
If we're talking about a year-long trial, that's a different issue. I mean, we are able to dictate what time they open and close the gates, but obviously with the skate park, it does need to be a reasonable time, which I think is fair. Sort of 8 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock is no good. So we need to do that, but within that. I mean, I think the thing with the 16,500, I think it was just a report, it is for 2 hours. If it takes them longer to clear the park, then we'll be charged on an hourly basis. And the further point I need to make to you, not that I'm trying to sway you one way or the other, is obviously that when this comes to the next BTAC budget, this is a 2% increase. 2% increase to pay for, budget over. 14,000 this last year was 1.9 something. So this would be just over a 2% increase as a revenue cost. So obviously this year would come out of reserves, but going forward it needs to be budgeted for, and that would be then become a 2% increase in the BTAC precinct. So the members are aware of that. Okay, right. No, I mean that's fine. It has been proposed and seconded. Did you have anything you wish to add, Fran, from the discussions, or?
If I can just respond briefly with a few points to some of the issues raised in the discussion, please, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, fine.
So initially, I think it's important to stress that the police didn't make the representations to consider the relocking of the park again in the hours of darkness in any way lightly when approaching colleagues at the borough. In the spirit of problem solving, when I'm looking at the situation in the park recently, it has 2 strands. One, the nuisance and inconvenience that has been caused to residents and the legitimate users of the park, but also upon police resources, which I think we can all agree would be by and large much better used elsewhere than going to deal repeatedly with incidents in the park at antisocial hours. Whilst I don't have the definitive breakdown, and I obviously had to pick some times in order to provide my statistics, as it were, I would suggest that the vast majority of the out of hours incidents correlate with the hours of darkness, which obviously vary at different times of the year. Anecdotally, I am unfortunately old enough to remember quite a lot of policing of the park when it used to be closed at night, including depressingly, probably when Councillor Griggs was one of those young people hopping over the fence. We possessed a key at the police station at that time, which we could use to access the park if we were called to service for anything serious. I only recall in probably about 10 years of policing before the decision was made to leave the park unlocked at night, only ever having to use that key once. You will have seen, obviously, in my report, some evidence that points towards the potential effectiveness of the locking of the park. One being that in lockdown number 1, when the park had to be briefly closed at the start of the pandemic, when none of us knew what the effect of the pandemic was going to be, we had 0 incidents reported in the park at the time that it was shut. You will also notice on there that one of my beat managers, having been so frustrated with the quantity of incidents he was being repeatedly called to that evening, including by our colleagues in CCTV, that he pulled the gates of the park shut and dispensed with the people in the park that were causing the nuisance, telling them that the park was closed. It was not in fact closed. Anybody could have gone in and out as they wished. But from that point onwards, no further incidents were called in that night. I also had my officers deploy in plain clothes in the park to try and understand the true picture of what was going on from a police perspective, because obviously we've had lots of reports from concerned residents. Their presence in the park did back up the reports that we were getting, that there was undesirable behaviour, loud yobbish behaviour going on until, I think one of the patrols we had went until 3 in the morning. Clearly they dealt with what was in the park as well as simply observing, but we do have that objective evidence that those issues were occurring. We've obviously worked closely with Councillor Hastie's, brought all the various issues from the residents to our attention, and I hope that you will be reassured from my statistics to see that, contrary to popular belief, the amount of incidents that we do not attend in the park and we grade as non-attendance is actually quite low compared to the amount of incidents we do attend, and therein lies the problem, in so much as we are here to police the whole of the Boston Borough area, all of the town centre and all of the villages, and with an increasing demand of going to the park on a regular basis, I would suggest that we could be utilising our resources more effectively elsewhere if the demand was to drop, which I'm sure you all agree. But that's my piece. All the rest of it is in that report, which you've obviously read. I'm happy for any questions if there are any left after all the excellent points that members have raised already.
Thank you, Fran. One would hope not. Right. Right, okay. We have it moved and seconded that we, option 1, in option 1, it's 4.3, that we employ the locking services of a security firm for 16,500 per annum for locking the park.
I'll move that.
Sorry?
I'll move that.
Oh, you already did.
Chairman?
I thought you had. It's fine. Yes, just looking you know.
Sorry, can I just clarify? I'm not sure, is that for a 4-month trial period?
For 1 year. It's for a year.
1 year, thank you.
That's what we're looking at on here, just for 1 year.
Mr. Chairman, point of information, do we have a price for these Magilocks, these wonderful Magilocks?
No, we don't, simply because I was advised by Property Services that the costs would be very, very expensive.
But we don't know how much.
We don't. We would have to have all the gates basically replaced. That's what
But it would be interesting to have that figure for
if you wish
members to consider. And especially the fact that it would be so labour saving that we could, and of course the police, it allows the police to do their job properly, doesn't it? Instead of them having to go down to look after the park, they can go around and see the lady that's fallen down or been burgled or whatever. So you release that resource back into the community. So that's the value of what we're suggesting here. And I was going to suggest to Councillor Hastie that he actually could ask for the Magilocks to be the preferred option.
Well, we don't have the figures for the Magilocks. We have a figure in the officer's reports which indicate some of the costs of altering the gates, and some of the problems with Magilocks themselves, in the fact that if people are locked in, there's a release button inside so you can press it to get out. But it also means if anybody climbs over the fence, they can just press the button and open the gate.
But surely if somebody presses the button to get out, they can let somebody in, can't they?
They can, but that's how they work.
Well, I think that really the police should have that facility to let them out or go down and say.
Well,
anyway, that's a police line.
That's not a magic lock.
No, well, I'm saying that the police should be able to access whoever's out. The magic locks are a much easier option, I think.
But I'm listening to what I'm advised by members. All I will say, Councillor, which is that a magic lock by my understanding, what I was told, is that it has to have a button on the inside so that anybody locked inside can press it to get out. And then that also means that anybody who climbs over the fence can press the button and open the gate to let anybody in.
Sorry, the Fran,
Fran wouldn't know, no, because it's not wasn't Fran's. I mean, Christian might be able to advise on the report.
Anybody.
It's only by what's in the report that I was told.
What's the point? I mean, if people are going to climb over the fence, why would they bother to open?
Well, that's why it's not a recommendation. It wasn't fully costed.
Well, any of them.
Well, any of them can climb over the fence.
Yes.
But this is a just makes them totally ineffective. Let's put it that way. But I don't know. I mean, it's been moved and seconded that we 4.3 for a year.
Okay.
Yes.
Can I propose an amendment to do that then, to encompass the locking it for a year, as Councillor Hastings suggested, at reasonable hours, as I suggested, and also employ a CCTV operator if Councillor Hastings happy to add that to his proposal. So he still gets his gates locked.
Well, I don't really see it as Btac's responsibility to employ a CCTV operator. That's just my view.
To support it, I asked if Councillor Hastings' proposer to the motion was happy to accept that change to his proposal.
But that would be an increase of about 6% on the council.
If it's for 1 year.
Cabinet can do that, can't they? Cabinet can pay for the CCTV.
Not if it's a Btac recommendation, I bet you don't know.
It is for 1 year.
You can't actually employ somebody for a year as a CCTV operator, can you?
Yeah, he can.
She can.
I don't agree with
Got a
that.
temporary contract.
Chairman, perhaps we could take that as a separate.
No, so it's been proposed that he added to his, so it's up to Councillor Hasty.
Yep, I'm happy for that. As long as the park gates get locked at night, I'm happy.
Well, yeah, well, we'll see. The market, I don't. Yes. What? Do that.
Sorry, can I suggest you take? Sorry, can I suggest you take them as two separate proposals?
You can suggest that. Yes. Thank you.
What are they? The first one is to lock the
Right,
parks.
well, we don't have a second, right, okay, anyway, it doesn't really matter. Right, Pippa, we have proposed by Councillor Hasty about closing the park. We had a seconder, I believe, at the time. No, we had a seconder.
Yeah, that was Councillor.
Yeah, right, okay. So we'll take that then, that we go for a year's trial of the park, locking the park with security firm, £16,500. Obviously, for Christian and the team to actually implement the contract. And obviously we want a reasonable time. So I think we'll have to, 10 o'clock?
Yeah, 6 till 10.
Or even 10:30. You know, 10:30, it's before pubs close.
But it's still light at 10:30. Well,
What about winter?
Well, winter, we'd vary it in winter. Obviously, you're not going to close it at 10 o'clock at night.
We always do dawn to dusk and it seems to work, doesn't it?
Chairman.
It's a nebulous thing though, isn't it? We did dawn to dusk and I remember being in the park and being thrown out about 6:30.
Okay.
In the summer.
Chairman.
Sorry. Yes, Christian, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you can leave the detail in terms of timing to officers in consultation with the chair and leader portfolio holder. We will gladly consult members on the detail. I think it's just the principle of what proposal we need to take forward this evening.
Fine, I just wanted to be clear on what they actually wanted it closed at.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just the £16,500
Yes.
with an additional fee if rocking takes longer than
Yeah, well,
2 hours.
that's
So
right.
we may go from
It probably will be more in the summer, but that's part of the proposal, isn't it? Okay, right, but it's a part of the proposal. All those in favour of that proposal? That's clearly carried in it. Right, the second proposal is from Councillor Griggs that we employ another CCT operator for the Btac area. Is that a recommendation to Cabinet, Councillor Griggs?
It's not a recommendation to Cabinet because I feel that if it went to Cabinet, they'd say we'll try and find the money out of existing budgets. And as we know on Btac, we do have some budget left. And as it's for Btac only, I get that it is a borough function, as is paying for the toilets that Btac currently do, and some of the other fees that Btac currently pay. The problem is, you know, unfortunately, we live in the real world, and I think if we want it for Btac, we're going to have to agree Btac pays it.
Well, not a problem with it. My thought, it's a problem really, is we pay for an operative to look at all the Btac areas, then CCTV, then we also pay to look at everybody else's areas.
Yes. And it would be put specifically for Btac.
Yeah, but we still pay to look at everybody else's because we pay for the CCTV operators already there as a taxpayer.
I get your point. I do see.
And that's where my view, Btac fund should be additional rather than part of what the borough should be providing. But additional things for now, if members of this committee think that it's worth that Boston residents paying extra for a CCTV operative, then who am I to say no? But it will be obviously it would come out of the reserves this year and would go on to the revenue costs of next year, which members need to be mindful of. They don't want to say no increase in the Btac preset because we won't have enough money to pay for it.
Unless we reorganise our.
Unless we cut something else.
Yes.
Which Councillor Giggs has said the council can't do.
Well, we can't cut.
No, we can.
Yes. Oh, right.
No, but anyway. We can cut whatever we want. So that's proposed and seconded then. All those in favour?
Yeah.
Quite clearly outvoted there, Jeanette. That's all right. I should just refuse to pay my Btac fees.
I wouldn't. We'll take your call.
Thank you, Chairman.
I'll move to a parish then. I'll move out of the town so I don't have to pay.
Mr. Chairman, I've got to cancel the question. I've got to go.
Okay.
And apologies to Fran.
Right. She's unaware of it.
It'll be another day.
Okay. Okay, then we'll move on to the work programme then. Phil? Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Fran, and thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes. The work programme for the 5th of August, we currently have the potential for a grant request arranging community events group. I'm not sure we've received anything at this point.
No.
On that, but we've got it in the plan in case it comes through. We have the open spaces improvements wish list. We have the report we've deferred from this agenda to other public conveniences, the costs and options. We have the bulky waste collection consideration of an amnesty and an update on setting up a town council, which I believe will.
Well, the setting of a town council considered for full, that won't actually be an issue now until scrutiny have looked at it.
I believe scrutiny will be looking in July.
Will they? Oh,
I understand.
Oh, good.
So we might.
Because when I asked them to look at it in the first instance, they said no. There you go. It's June. No, I mean before we pass it on to council and ask them to look at setting it down.
Yeah, the council will pick that up. Yeah, it'll go to council.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay.
This will only be nothing because I believe it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Right. Everybody happy with the? I mean, I'm mindful that we did actually want LHP and the housing people to come to a Btac meeting, but at the minute we seem to be being bogged down with everything else. We've not really had time to invite them to come. So maybe later in the year, we could look at that. Yes, Councillor Daly.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to probably, because I have been in discussion with a lot of members of the public, is regarding the parkings. Can we get an update on the parkings? Because a lot of people now are sort of complaining they would like to bring the 1 hour free parking back in Boston so they can improve again, improve our economy in town. And some of them, they have suggestions. So if we can have an update in that and see where we can go, if we can go back to 1 hour probably, parking free.
That wasn't anything that we actually paid for, Councillor Danny, it was the Borough Council.
Just if we can take a decision, Btac, because most of the parking are in our town.
Well, yeah, but it's not anything we get the proceeds from, that's my point.
I know. It's just, if we can discuss this, if you can give some suggestion, I think, to the cabinet or something.
I think we could ask if you we can, through Btac, we can ask the relevant scrutiny committee to look at it, or we can debate it and pass it back to cabinet.
If you can do that, Mr. Chairman, it would be, appreciated.
But I mean, there's nothing actually we can actually do about it.
If it helps, I know that the cabinet are going to send something to scrutiny to look at how we can potentially change our car parking fee structure, because I think most of cabinet would like the free parking back. Unfortunately, the car parking brings in about £1 million of our budget. So unless we want to cut services, it's a case of look at how we can do it differently. So I think that is going to scrutiny. I'm not sure when. Okay. So realistically, it negates the need for it to come to Btac to say, can you look at it? Because then that just gets sent to scrutiny anyway, which is the plan. So sorry for stepping on.
What I was going to say was, people moan about the parking being start to be recharged, rather than thinking, well, thank you for the council supporting us for this length of time. And I do think people are very, very selfish.
There you are. I wouldn't disagree. They do pay the council tax. So yes, Councillor Chant.
Yeah, so I spoke to a lot of people when I was canvassing and the car park was brought up. And a lot of people actually just said, we're grateful for the free parking, but what are we coming back into town for? And maybe the rate could reflect that we now haven't got Aldridge and we haven't got the other things to come into town. We're not saying we don't want to pay, we're saying, can it be looked at in terms of rates?
Yeah, I mean, that's I say that's what scrutiny. If Councillor Griggs has said that it's going to scrutiny, then that's what they were looking at. That's a fair point. It's a fair point. I think we all share that. But at the end of the day, as Councillor Griggs said, it's if it comes off the council parking charges, it goes on to the council tax.
It must be, it must be some solution. We wait for the scrutiny. If it comes to scrutiny, then we can see where we can go from there.
Well, I mean, I'm not a businessman, but I do know people don't pay you, don't they? So, I mean, I'm all for having free car parking, but there you go. That would be my choice.
You mean like at Tesco's and Asda?
I mean, the matter of fact, if we talk about Boston and the parking, I would probably agree with Councillor Stevens. People, you give them a small bit, they want everything. We have on Tony Street, Torright Street, 2 hours free parking. So a lot of people, they park there. You can park at Lidl's without paying, because before the use, you have to scan your bill or your receipt. So there is free parkings around the town, but some people, they want probably the parking to go to the shop. So that's how I see it. But I think if we can do something and come with an idea as a Btac members, to encourage people to come and shop in our town, that would be perfect.
Well, we'll see what happens at the scrutiny, and then we will bring it, we'll bring it to Btac. If that's okay, Justin? Anyone else?
So we've got the LHP invite, which we'll put on a later agenda.
Well, yeah, I'm just wondering about put it a bit later. I mean, I know we did say we'd have a little bit of we did want to have a meeting to discuss what we wanted to ask LHP, but I noticed they just got an award for community engagement.
Wow. That's very good. I've managed that.
Excuse me, Chairman.
Well, so I'm wrapping it up in, Justin, it's all well. Yes.
I did put a paper to suggestion to you about toilets. Has that been pursued any further?
I passed it on. Michelle's gone now. I did pass it on.
Right.
To the relevant people to look at, but it was all to do with this report for the park. Right. And I've asked them to look at it with that.
Thank you,
to Victoria Birds. I did forward your email to Victoria and asked them to look at the, I think I did ask whoever the cabinet member was responsible.
Mr. Chair, if I just say that, just to say something, inform about the information of blocking the park, which date?
When I get the information and when it's going to happen, you will be informed.
Please.
I'm sure Councillor Hayes will be there with his little ribbon.
Good idea. Yeah, joining it. Yes. I think it's true.
There you go. Yeah, we will. Right, anyone else got anything to wish to add to the work programme? Well, thank you all for your attendance. Thank you all. Actually, well, we are just for it. But thank you all, and like to look forward to seeing you again.
Yes.
I think it's been a bit different today.
Well, nice, actually.
We're a little bit drawn out. This trying to see everybody is a bit of a problem.
It's a bigger room. It's much better to give you space. So it's
well, this is nice here, but it's actually trying to keep an eye on what's happening over there.